You mean to tell me that this human, this lone, unaugmented, genetically unmodified, evolutionary dead end of a species somehow made an entire battalion of Craxthor warriors refuse combat? Admiral Zixnor's eye stalks quivered in shock, the iridescent membrane of his third eyelid fluttering rapidly. Yes, Admiral, the intelligence officer replied, mandibles clicking nervously. The reports are consistent across all channels. The Craxthor 3rd Offensive Division, the same warriors who decimated the Andromedan fleet at the Battle of Nexus Prime, have formally requested reassignment rather than engage this single human. Preposterous! The Admiral's tentacles coiled tightly around his command staff. The Craxthor are bred for war. Their exoskeletons can withstand direct plasma fire. They have redundant nervous systems and panic suppressors hardwired into their cerebral cortexes. They don't refuse combat. They don't even understand the concept. The holoprojector flickered to life, displaying a rather unremarkable human female. Average height, athletic but not imposing build, with dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. Though the Admiral had always found the naming peculiar, as the appendage looked nothing like the tail of a pony, whatever that was. This is her? This is what has the most feared warriors in 3 galactic sectors soiling their combat harnesses? The Admiral's voice dripped with sarcasm that transcended species barriers. Lieutenant Alexis Reed, sir. Human, age 34 standard cycles, former instructor in their Special Forces Division. And what makes her so special that the Craxthor would rather face our firing squads than her? The intelligence officer hesitated. That's just it, sir. We don't know. 3 solar cycles earlier, Lieutenant Alexis Reed had been enjoying her morning coffee when the aliens invaded. Well, invaded was perhaps too strong a word. Showed up uninvited and started being real dicks about everything. Would be more accurate, but the history books would probably go with invaded. History books had a tendency to be dramatic like that. It wasn't the first contact humanity had dreamed of. No diplomatic exchanges, no sharing of cultural knowledge, no heartwarming speeches about unity across the stars. Just a bunch of 8-foot-tall insectoid warriors with superiority complexes and a penchant for shooting first and not bothering to ask questions later. The Craxthor had chosen to make their grand entrance by targeting military installations first. A classic strategy, albeit a bit cliché. Their initial assaults had been devastatingly effective. Humanity's most advanced weaponry might as well have been spitballs against their biomechanical armor. Their ships moved with impossible precision, their soldiers fought with ruthless efficiency, and their command structure adapted to human tactics faster than human commanders could implement them. In short, humanity was getting its collective ass handed to it on a very shiny, very alien platter. Which made the events at Outpost 42, a remote training facility nestled in what used to be called the Rocky Mountains, all the more peculiar. Let me get this straight, Reed said, staring down the commander of Earth's Unified Defense Force, with the kind of look that made hardened soldiers suddenly remember urgent appointments elsewhere. You want me to train a resistance cell with whatever resources I can scrounge up from this facility, which, and I'm just making sure I understand the situation correctly, consists of 16 recruits who haven't even completed basic training, a maintenance guy named Dave who once built a potato cannon, and a therapy dog named Biscuit? General Harrison nodded gravely. That's correct, Lieutenant. We're spread thin as it is. Most of our remaining forces are engaged in evacuation operations or defensive positions around the last megacities. Sir, with all due respect, what the hell am I supposed to do with... She gestured around the room at the wide-eyed recruits trying very hard to look like they weren't absolutely terrified. This? Whatever it takes, Lieutenant. We've lost contact with 70% of our installations worldwide. The Craxthor are methodically working their way through the rest. But they haven't detected this facility yet, probably because it's so remote and partially built into the mountain. You might have a few weeks before they find you. And then what? We throw Biscuit at them and hope they're allergic to golden retrievers? The general didn't smile. Then you do what you were trained to do. You make them regret ever setting foot on this planet. Reed pinched the bridge of her nose. Right. Make a squad of semi-trained kids and a dog into a force capable of repelling technologically superior alien warriors. No problem. I'll just pull that off with my magical military fairy dust. I know it seems impossible. It doesn't seem impossible, sir. It is impossible. These aren't soldiers. They're barely adults. Half of them probably still have posters of boy bands on their bedroom walls. Actually, piped up a young recruit who immediately regretted speaking when Reed's gaze lasered in on him. It's K-pop girl groups now, ma'am. Thank you for that crucial cultural update, recruit, Reed said dryly. That'll definitely help us defeat the aliens. Lieutenant, the general said, lowering his voice. I know I'm asking the impossible, but right now impossible is all we've got left. Reed looked at the faces around her, young, scared, but trying so damn hard to be brave, and felt something in her chest tighten. She'd spent 15 years training the best of the best, pushing elite soldiers to their absolute limits. These kids weren't elite. They weren't even soldiers, not really. But they were what humanity had left. Fine, she finally said. But I'm going to need every resource this facility has. And I mean everything. The general nodded. Whatever you need. As he turned to leave, Reed called after him. And sir, if I'm going to die fighting oversized alien cockroaches, I'm at least going to make sure they remember the experience. For however long they have left to live. The general almost smiled. I'd expect nothing less, Lieutenant. So what exactly are we looking at? Asked Fleet Commander Vrax, as he studied the holographic display of the mountain facility. The tactical officer, a lower-ranked Kraxthar with only 4 battle scars adorning his carapace, manipulated the controls to zoom in on the human structure. It appears to be a training outpost, Commander. Minimal defenses, limited personnel. Our scans detect approximately 18 human life forms and 1 quadrupedal non-sentient creature. Negligible resistance, then, Vrax chittered dismissively. Why has it not been eliminated already? It wasn't prioritized, Commander. Our algorithmic targeting protocol focused on installations with strategic value. This facility was deemed inconsequential. Vrax's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. Then let's make it a training exercise for our newest warriors. Send in a single squadron. 20 warriors should be sufficient overkill for 18 untrained humans. Yes, Commander. As the tactical officer moved to relay the orders, a communications specialist approached with the nervous gait of one bearing potentially unwelcome news. Commander, there is an unusual transmission being broadcast from the human facility. Vrax's compound eyes gleamed with mild interest. Oh, put it through. The main view screen flickered and a human female appeared. She was looking directly into the camera with an expression that, even to alien sensibilities, registered as remarkably unconcerned given the circumstances. Attention alien invaders, she said casually, as though addressing telemarketers rather than conquering forces. This is Lieutenant Alexis Reed of Earth's Special Forces. I understand you're probably busy with your whole subjugate the primitive species agenda, but I wanted to extend a personal invitation. I've got 18 people here who've barely learned which end of a gun goes bang, and I'm training them to fight you. It's not going very well, to be honest. She paused, taking a sip from a steaming container. So here's my proposal. Instead of wasting a whole bunch of your warriors on us, why don't you send, I don't know, 20 or so? Make it a fair fight. Well, fair for you, anyway. Vrax's antennae twitched in confusion. Is this some form of human humor? The woman continued. If you're monitoring this transmission, and let's be real, you probably are because you seem like the thorough type. I'm sure you're wondering if this is a trap. It's not. I genuinely have a bunch of kids who still can't field strip a rifle without fumbling it, and I'd appreciate the training opportunity. You get to eliminate us. We get a learning experience before we die. Win-win. Or, win-lose, depending on your perspective. She smiled, and somehow that expression sent an unfamiliar sensation through Vrax's thorax, something ancestral Kraxthar might have recognized as unease. So come on down to Outpost 42. We'll leave the lights on for you. The transmission ended. The command center remained silent for several moments. Commander? The tactical officer finally ventured. Should we proceed with the squadron deployment? Vrax found himself unconsciously running a claw along the edge of his armored forearm. Yes, he said, but then added, no. Send 40 warriors instead of 20. But sir, our scans confirmed only 18 humans. I am aware of our scans, Vrax snapped. Send 40. Was that really necessary? Asked technical specialist Zhao, watching as Reed powered down the communications array. What, the invitation? Reed shrugged. Probably not, but it'll make them nervous. Or it'll make them send more troops to obliterate us, countered Medical Officer Torres, who was inventorying their limited medical supplies with an increasingly grim expression. That's exactly what I'm counting on, Reed said, moving to the facility's main planning table where she'd laid out a topographical map of the surrounding terrain. They'll either send a smaller force because they think we're not worth the resources, or they'll send a larger one because they're suspicious. Either way, they'll come to us, which means we choose the battlefield. But we're still hideously outnumbered and outgunned, said Zhao, stating what everyone was thinking. Reed looked up, a glint in her eye that made the technical specialist take an involuntary step back. True. But did you know that human history is full of examples where a small, determined force managed to defeat a superior enemy through asymmetric warfare? What's asymmetric warfare? Asked one of the youngest recruits, a baby-faced kid named Miller who barely looked old enough to drive, let alone fight aliens. It's when you look at what you have, what they have, and figure out how to make the difference irrelevant. Reed pointed to different areas on the map. We can't match them in technology, numbers, or direct firepower, so we don't try to. Instead, we use what we do have. Which is? Torres prompted skeptically. Reed's smile was not entirely comforting. Knowledge of the terrain, home field advantage, and the fact that they have no idea what humans are truly capable of when backed into a corner. The Crackstar insertion shuttles descended under the cover of darkness, their advanced stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. Commander Vrax had ultimately decided to send 50 warriors, a clear sign of either respect or paranoia, depending on one's interpretation. Squad leader Krezek, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests, performed final weapons checks with his unit. The human facility should offer minimal resistance, but something about the female's transmission had put the entire command structure on edge. There was a word in the ancient Crackstar dialect that roughly translated to prey that knows too much. It was rarely used, as most species encountered by the Crackstar had the good sense to be appropriately terrified. This human had not seemed terrified, and that was unsettling. Remember, Krezek addressed his warriors. Humans are physically weak but unpredictable. Their bodies are soft. Their bones break easily, but do not underestimate their capacity for desperate action. They lack exoskeletons and redundant organs, so aim center mass for efficient termination. One of the younger warriors clicked his mandibles nervously. Squad leader, is it true what they say about humans? That they continue fighting even after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate any rational species? Their pain response is aberrant, Krezek conceded. They sometimes ignore damage that should render them non-functional. It is a biological curiosity, nothing more. Their primitive nervous systems occasionally malfunction under stress. The shuttles touched down 3 kilometers from the facility, close enough for a quick approach, far enough to avoid any primitive detection systems the humans might have. Move out, Krezek ordered. Standard purification protocol, no survivors. The Crackstar warriors moved with eerie synchronization, their biomechanical armor adapting to the mountainous terrain, their vision systems automatically adjusting to the low-light conditions. They were the apex predators of a dozen worlds, evolved and enhanced for conquest. The human invitation had been noted and dismissed as psychological tactics, primitive and transparent. They approached the first ridge overlooking the facility with confidence, which is precisely when everything went to hell. The ground beneath the lead warriors suddenly gave way, not in the random manner of natural collapse, but in the carefully engineered fashion of a prepared trap. Sharpened stakes fashioned from the local conifers lined the pit, angled to pierce even the resilient Crackstar exoskeletons through their joint seams. Before the remaining warriors could react, the night erupted in blinding light and deafening noise. Simple but effective flashbang devices, cobbled together from the facility's emergency flares and what appeared to be repurposed audio equipment, disoriented the Crackstar's sensitive compound eyes and auditory receptors. Primitive ambush techniques, Krezek hissed through the tactical channel, adjusting his sensory filters. Maintain formation and advance! But the humans weren't following any recognizable tactical doctrine. Instead of a coordinated defense or a strategic retreat, they seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, harassing with minimal weapons fire before disappearing into the landscape, triggering improvised traps that shouldn't have worked against advanced warriors but somehow did. A strange projectile arced through the air, landing among a cluster of warriors. It wasn't an explosive. Their sensors would have detected conventional munitions, but rather a simple container that burst on impact, spraying the area with a noxious substance. Chemical attack! Warned a warrior, seconds before the compound began eating through the outer layer of his armor. Impossible, Krezek countered, even as he watched 3 of his warriors writhing as the substance found the microscopic seams in their protection. Our intelligence indicated this facility had no access to advanced chemical weapons. Through his comm system came the voice of another squad leader. It's not a military compound. It's household cleaning agents combined with cooking oil and something acidic. Household cleaning agents. The humans were fighting the most advanced military force in the known galaxy, with the contents of their maintenance closet. And somehow it was working. They're falling back to regroup, Zhao reported, monitoring the crude motion sensors they'd hastily deployed around the perimeter. I count at least 8 casualties on their side. Reed nodded, quickly reloading the jury-rigged launcher they'd constructed from drainage pipes and compressed air systems. Miller, Torres, move to position 3 and set off the next sequence. Bianchi, how are we looking on those chemical mixtures? The recruit, who'd revealed an unexpected talent for chemistry born from what he sheepishly admitted was an ill-advised teenage pyromania phase, looked up from his workstation. I've got 4 more batches ready, Lieutenant. Turns out the compounds in industrial oven cleaner react enthusiastically with their armor material. Keep 'em coming, Reed ordered, then turned to where Dave the maintenance guy was rigging the facility's backup generator to the perimeter fence. How's our surprise coming? Dave gave a thumbs up. If they touch that fence, they're gonna get a shock that'll make them wish they'd stayed in whatever part of space they crawled out of. Good. Reed checked her watch. They've been on site for 43 minutes, and we've inflicted casualties without losing anyone. That's already longer than they expected this to take. She looked around at her improbable fighting force. Recruits who'd been learning to march in formation less than a week ago, now grimly effective guerrilla fighters. They're going to get more aggressive now. They've got wounded pride to deal with. As if summoned by her prediction, the night sky lit up as the Crackstar brought heavier weapons to bear. Energy pulses slammed into the outer buildings of the facility, vaporizing concrete and steel. They're done playing nice, Reed observed unnecessarily as the ground shook beneath them. Everybody remember the withdrawal plan. Fall back in stages just like we practiced. And remember, make them work for every inch. Squad leader Krasik was experiencing an emotion unfamiliar to most Crackstar warriors: frustration. The humans should have been eliminated within minutes of engagement. Instead, his forces had suffered actual casualties, not just injuries, but warriors who would not be returning to combat, against humans armed with improvised weapons and apparent household items. Thermal imaging shows they're retreating deeper into the mountain facility, reported his second-in-command. Their outer defenses are collapsing under our heavy weapons fire. Of course they are, Krasik hissed. That was never in question. The issue is that we have lost warriors to what should have been an effortless purification operation. The human female, another warrior ventured. She fights, unusually. Krasik's mandibles clicked in irritation. She fights desperately, as all doomed species do. There is nothing special about her tactics. They are simply unexpected because they are so primitive. But even as he spoke, doubt crept through his mind like a parasitic larva. The human was using the environment, using the Crackstar's expectations against them. When they'd adjusted their thermal vision to track the humans through walls, they'd been met with heating units placed to create false signatures. When they'd switched to motion detection, they'd found small motorized devices scattered throughout the facility, creating misleading movement patterns. It was as though she'd anticipated every technological advantage they possessed, and found a crude but effective counter. We will end this now, Krasik decided. Full assault, all remaining warriors. Overwhelm them with superior numbers and firepower. As his warriors moved into position, a communication request came through from the orbiting command vessel. Krasik reluctantly accepted. Squad leader, Fleet Commander Vrax's voice held an edge of impatience. Explain why a simple purification operation against 18 unaugmented humans has extended to nearly 2 hours with multiple warrior casualties. Krasik's pride stung at the rebuke. The human leader is employing unconventional tactics, Commander. We are adjusting our approach and will complete the mission shortly. The human leader. There was a dangerous note in Vrax's voice. You mean the female who actually invited us to attack? Yes, Commander. She appears to have... I'm deploying a second squadron to your location. Vrax interrupted. Your performance is noted and will be addressed upon your return. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Krasik seething with humiliation. A second squadron, as though his warriors weren't capable of handling a handful of humans. The dishonor would follow him for cycles. All warriors advance immediately, he ordered. No further delays. Terminate all humans with extreme prejudice. They're really pissed off now, Reed observed as the enemy forces began a coordinated push into the facility's main building. Right on schedule. The remaining defenders had retreated to the central command post, essentially a glorified bunker built into the mountainside. It had been designed to withstand natural disasters, not alien energy weapons. But the thick concrete and steel reinforcement were holding up better than expected. We can't hold this position for long, Torres warned, treating a burn on Zhao's arm where he'd been grazed by enemy fire. They've got us cornered. We're not trying to hold it, Reed replied, checking the timer on her tablet. We just need to hold it long enough. The youngest recruit, Miller, was visibly shaking but still manning his position. Lieutenant, I don't understand. We've retreated as far as we can go. What's the endgame here? Reed gave him what she hoped was a reassuring smile. The endgame, Miller, is making them come to us. All of them. In one place. A massive explosion rocked the bunker as the Kraxthar breached the main door. Alarms blared, emergency lights bathed everything in red, and the acrid smell of burnt electronics filled the air. Dave, Reed called over to the maintenance guy, who was hunched over a jerry-rigged control panel. Tell me you've got good news. Dave didn't look up from his work, but his voice was steady. Rerouted the facility's entire power grid just like you asked, Lieutenant. Every last watt is ready to go exactly where you want it. Good man. Reed turned to the rest of her battered team. Everybody clear on the evacuation route? Nods all around, though none looked particularly confident. Then get moving. You've got exactly 3 minutes to be through the maintenance tunnels and out the emergency exit. I'll be right behind you. Torres frowned. Lieutenant, that's an order, Torres. Get these people out. I've got one last thing to do. The medic clearly wanted to argue, but instead gave a reluctant nod. 3 minutes. Then we're coming back for you. Reed waited until they'd filed out through the hidden access panel, before turning back to the main entrance. The Kraxthar were almost through. She could hear the alien screeching of their communication, the heavy thuds of their armored bodies against the reinforced door. She took a deep breath, checked her watch one more time, and picked up the facility's emergency radio transmitter. Hey, Bug Boys, she said into it, knowing the Kraxthar could intercept the frequency. Gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. I thought you'd be through that door at least 10 minutes ago. Are all your warriors this slow, or did I just get the budget version? The pounding on the door intensified. Reed continued, her voice deliberately casual. You know what's really sad? I bet your commanders up there in orbit are watching this whole thing and thinking, wow, our elite warriors are really struggling with one human female and a bunch of kids. That's gotta be embarrassing for you. A section of the door began to glow red as the aliens applied some kind of cutting tool. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know that this has been fun, but I've got places to be. Oh, and one more thing. Humans have this saying, if you can't beat 'em, cheat. The door burst inward in a shower of molten metal and concrete dust. Armored Kraxthar warriors poured through the opening, weapons raised, mandibles clicking in what Reed imagined was the alien equivalent of a battle cry. She looked at her watch. Perfect timing. Dave, she said into her radio, hit it. She was already diving through the access panel when the entire facility's electrical system, emergency generators, backup batteries, and main power grid discharged directly into the bunker's metal flooring. The conductive material that Dave had carefully laid throughout the room, which turned out to be nothing more complicated than aluminum foil and copper wiring, carried the massive electrical surge straight to the invaders. As Reed pulled the panel shut behind her, the last thing she saw was dozens of Kraxthar warriors convulsing as electricity arced across their supposedly advanced armor. Armor that, as it happened, conducted electricity remarkably well. What do you mean, lost contact? Fleet Commander Vrax's voice had gone dangerously quiet. The communications officer's antennae flattened submissively. Both squadrons, Commander. All warriors. We've lost life sign readings and communication signals from every unit deployed to the human facility. That's impossible, Vrax hissed. We sent over 90 warriors to eliminate 18 humans. 17 humans, Commander. The tactical officer corrected timidly. Our scans now show only 17 human life signs, moving away from the facility through what appears to be a tunnel system. And our warriors? The tactical officer's compound eyes dimmed. No life signs, Commander. Vrax stood perfectly still for a long moment, his exoskeleton creaking slightly with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled but vibrating with fury. Prepare a full battalion for immediate deployment. I want that mountain facility reduced to atoms. I want those tunnels collapsed. I want every human. Commander, the communications officer interrupted, a suicidal act under normal circumstances. We're receiving a transmission from the human female. Without waiting for orders, the officer put it through to the main screen. The human looked disheveled but decidedly alive. Behind her was what appeared to be a forest clearing, with the other surviving humans visible in the background. Hello again, she said, looking directly into whatever recording device she was using. I'm guessing by now you've figured out that your warriors won't be calling home. Sorry about that. Well, not really, but it seems like the polite thing to say. She shrugged, an annoyingly casual gesture given the circumstances. Here's the thing. You're probably thinking about glassing this whole area from orbit right now. Totally understandable. I'd be pretty pissed too if someone took out my entire strike force with household cleaning products and rewired electrical systems. The human paused, and against all evolutionary instinct, Vrax found himself waiting for her next words. But before you do that, you should know two things. First, we're not at the facility anymore, so you'd just be wasting ordnance. And second, she held up what appeared to be a data storage device. I recorded everything. Every trap, every tactic, every weakness we exploited in your supposedly superior warriors. And I've already transmitted it to every remaining human military installation worldwide. She smiled, and despite being a completely different species with entirely different facial structures, Vrax recognized the expression for exactly what it was, the look of a predator. So here's my counterproposal, the human continued. You can keep throwing warriors at us. We'll keep killing them. Eventually you might win. You've got the numbers after all. But we'll make you pay in blood for every inch of this planet. And by the time you're done, every human left will know exactly how to hurt you. She leaned closer to the camera. Or you can go find some other planet to bully. One where the locals don't turn out to be really good at killing things that try to kill them first. The transmission ended. The command center was silent. Commander? The tactical officer finally ventured. Your orders? Vrax stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then, with deliberate movements, he activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Fleet Commander Vrax. All warriors currently preparing for planetary deployment, stand down. Navigational officers, plot a course out of this system. Sir? The tactical officer's confusion was evident in his voice. We're retreating? Vrax turned, his compound eyes glittering. We are making a strategic withdrawal to reassess our approach to this species. But Commander, they're just humans. Physically inferior, technologically primitive. A single human female with minimal resources just eliminated 90 of our warriors. Vrax interrupted coldly. Does that sound inferior to you? The tactical officer wisely remained silent. Transmit to High Command, Vrax continued. Subject, Earth. Message. Planet contains hostile species with extreme tactical adaptability and disproportionate combat effectiveness. Recommend bypassing for more suitable conquest targets. As the massive Kraxthar vessels began maneuvering away from Earth, Vrax found himself wondering what other surprises the deceptively fragile-looking species might have in store for unwary conquerors. Perhaps just this once, conquest wasn't worth the cost. They're leaving, Zhao confirmed, staring at the makeshift detection equipment they'd salvaged from the facility. Just packing up and leaving. The survivors of Outpost 42 were gathered in the forest clearing, watching the night sky as pinpoints of light that represented the alien fleet gradually disappeared. I can't believe that worked, Torres said, shaking her head in disbelief. I mean, I was on board with the plan and everything, but I didn't actually think they'd leave. Reed leaned back against a tree, wincing slightly at the pain from a cracked rib she'd sustained during their escape. It wasn't just the tactics, it was making them question whether conquering us was worth the trouble. But we didn't really transmit your recordings to other military bases, Miller pointed out. We don't even have working communications with anyone else. They don't know that, Reed replied with a tired smile. That's the beauty of psychological warfare. It's not about what's true. It's about what the enemy believes. Dave, the maintenance guy, who had somehow managed to keep hold of a thermos of coffee through the entire ordeal, raised it in a toast. To making scary-ass alien warriors think twice about messing with humans. I'll drink to that, Reed agreed, accepting the thermos and taking a swig before passing it around the circle. As the survivors shared the coffee and began planning their next move, Reed found herself looking up at the stars. The Kraxthar might be gone for now, but humankind's adventures in the cosmos were just beginning. And if other alien species came calling with conquest in mind, they'd learn the same lesson. Humans might be outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched on paper, but they were scrappy, resourceful, and absolutely refused to go quietly. In the vast, cold reaches of space, that reputation might just keep them alive. And that, Admiral Zixner said, finishing the account, is why the Kraxthar 3rd Offensive Division has formally requested reassignment rather than engage Lieutenant Alexis Reed or any forces under her command. The Supreme Council chamber was silent as the 7 members of the Galactic Hegemony's ruling body processed the information. 1 human female, the Patriarch of the Void finally said, his crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. Armed with cleaning supplies and improvised electrical systems. Essentially, yes, Admiral Zixnor confirmed. And these Kraxthar warriors, the ones we've employed as our primary conquest force for the last 3 galactic cycles, are now refusing combat assignments that might put them in contact with humans? Asked the Mechanist Overseer, her cybernetic eye whirring as it recalibrated. They've invoked the Primal Deterrence Clause in their service contract, the Admiral explained. It allows them to refuse engagements with species that demonstrate, how did they phrase it? Irrationally effective combat capacity relative to their apparent capabilities. The Matriarch of the Seven Suns leaned forward, her luminescent skin pulsing with interest. I've reviewed the technical data from the Kraxthar armor systems. The improvised electrical discharge shouldn't have been nearly powerful enough to penetrate their protective fields. And yet it did, noted the Void Shadow, the Council's intelligence specialist, which suggests either our understanding of human electrical engineering is flawed or the Kraxthar armor isn't as advanced as they've led us to believe. Finished the Genesis Architect, the Council's youngest member. Admiral Zixnor's tentacles twisted uncomfortably. There is another possibility, Supreme Council. One that the Kraxthar themselves have suggested in their formal report. And that is, prompted the Eternalist, who had thus far remained silent. That humans possess some intrinsic quality we don't understand. Something beyond technology or physical attributes. They're calling it tactical intuition. The chamber erupted in multiple species laughter. Superstitious nonsense, declared the Mechanist Overseer. Next they'll be claiming humans have magical powers. Nevertheless, interjected the 7th and final council member, the ancient witness who rarely spoke at proceedings. The fact remains that 90 Kraxthar warriors were defeated by 17 humans with improvised weapons. Whatever the explanation, we would be unwise to dismiss the incident. The laughter faded as the council members considered this perspective. What do you recommend, Admiral? Asked the Patriarch of the Void. Admiral Zixnor had prepared for this question. We have 3 options, Supreme Council. 1. We can assign a different warrior species to continue the conquest of Earth, accepting the potential for higher-than-anticipated casualties. 2. We can bypass Earth entirely and focus on more easily subjugated worlds. Or 3. He hesitated. Yes? Prompted the Matriarch of the Seven Suns. Or 3, we can attempt diplomatic contact. Offer the humans membership in the hegemony as a protected species rather than a conquered one. The council chamber went deathly quiet. You suggest we treat with them as equals? The Genesis Architect asked incredulously. A species that hasn't even achieved interstellar travel on their own? Admiral Zixnor's eye stalks quivered in what might have been interpreted as a shrug. I merely present the options, Supreme Council. I will implement whatever directive you issue. The witness shifted forward, the movement unusual enough to draw all attention. There is wisdom in respecting an adversary who has earned it. Throughout our long history, the hegemony has occasionally encountered species that defied conventional assessment. Some became our greatest allies. Others, the ancient being paused meaningfully. Others became extinction events. An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. We should investigate further before deciding, the Matriarch of the Seven Suns finally suggested. Perhaps this Lieutenant Reed is an anomaly among her kind. The intelligence reports suggest otherwise, countered the Void Shadow. Human history is replete with examples of similar behavior, smaller forces defeating technologically or numerically superior opponents through what they term asymmetric warfare, or guerrilla tactics. It appears to be a species-wide trait. The Mechanist Overseer's cybernetic components whirred as she processed this information. Then perhaps we should consider option 3, distasteful as it may be. The resources required to subjugate a species with this peculiar adaptability might exceed the value gained from conquest. I propose a test, the Genesis Architect said suddenly. One final assessment before we commit to a course of action. Send a diplomatic envoy to this Lieutenant Reed. Offer her a position as a tactical consultant to the hegemony. A consultant? The Patriarch of the Void's voice resonated with surprise. You wish to employ a human? Indeed. If she accepts, we gain valuable insight into human combat methodology. If she refuses... The Genesis Architect's facial appendages arranged themselves into what passed for a smile among her species. We will have confirmed that humans are too unpredictable to integrate into the hegemony, and can proceed with option 2. The council members exchanged glances, a complex series of gestural communications passing between them. Very well, the Patriarch of the Void finally declared. Admiral Zixner, you will personally extend this offer to Lieutenant Alexis Reed. The Council will reconvene upon your return to determine our final approach to Earth. Admiral Zixnor suppressed a ripple of dismay along his tentacles. The last place in the galaxy he wanted to be was face-to-face with the human who had decimated the Craxthur squadrons. But orders were orders. As the Council commands, he acknowledged, bowing low. Lieutenant Reed was enjoying her second cup of real coffee in months when the alien showed up. In the weeks since what was now being called the Battle of Outpost 42, Earth's remaining military forces had rallied around her tactics. The Craxthar's unexpected withdrawal had given humanity a desperately needed reprieve. Time to study the alien technology salvaged from the battlefield, and to implement Reed's improvised warfare techniques on a global scale. She'd been relocated to what remained of the North American Central Command, a bunker complex that had survived the initial invasion thanks to some creative electronic countermeasures, and given an absurd number of medals and promotions that she'd promptly ignored. Titles didn't matter much when your species was still fighting for survival. What mattered was coffee, and the fact that her ragtag band of survivors from Outpost 42 had all made it back to civilization intact, including Biscuit the therapy dog, who had since been unofficially promoted to morale officer. So when a shimmering distortion appeared in the middle of her sparse quarters and resolved into a tentacled, multi-eyed alien creature, Reed's first reaction wasn't fear or surprise. It was irritation at potentially spilled coffee. You know, she said, carefully setting her mug down, most people knock. The alien's eye stalks quivered in what might have been surprise. Lieutenant Alexis Reed, it said, its voice emanating not from any visible mouth, but seemingly from a small device attached to what she guessed was its equivalent of a collar. I am Admiral Zixnor of the Galactic Hegemony. I come under diplomatic protocol. Reed leaned back in her chair, deliberately casual. Diplomatic protocol, that's new. Your bug friends tried the shoot-everything-that-moves protocol. Didn't work out so well for them. The Craxthur are not my friends, the alien corrected, its tentacles coiling in what Reed interpreted as discomfort. They are a warrior species contracted by the hegemony for specific military operations. Contractors. Got it. I guess that explains why they cut and ran when the going got tough. Reed crossed her arms. So what does the galactic hegemony want with me? Because if it's an apology for the whole invasion thing, you're going to need to do better than just dropping into my room unannounced. Admiral Zixnor's translucent membrane flickered across multiple eyes in rapid succession, a blink of confusion perhaps. I am here to extend an offer, he said, his translator device giving his words a formal, slightly stilted quality. The Supreme Council of the Galactic Hegemony wishes to employ you as a tactical consultant. Reed stared at the alien for a long moment before bursting into laughter. I'm sorry, she said, still chuckling. You invade our planet, kill millions of our people, and now you want to hire me? That's actually the most ridiculous thing I've heard since this whole mess started. And I once had to seriously consider whether a golden retriever could be trained to distract alien warriors. The offer is genuine, Zixnor insisted, his tentacles rippling in what might have been agitation. Your tactical ingenuity against the Craxthur has impressed certain members of the Council. They believe your insights could be valuable to the hegemony. Reed's laughter faded, replaced by a calculating look. And what would Earth get out of this arrangement? Consideration for protected status within the hegemony, rather than conquest or bypassing. Protected status, Reed repeated flatly. Meaning what exactly? We become your pets? Your zoo exhibit? Here's the clever little species that beat the bug boys with cleaning supplies? Zixnor's eye stalks drooped slightly. The details would be negotiated, but protected species enjoy certain rights and privileges. Non-interference in internal affairs, limited technology transfers, defense against external threats, but not full membership in your hegemony, Reed interrupted. Not a seat at the table. That would be unprecedented. Earth has not achieved independent interstellar travel, which is the minimum threshold for... So that's a no. Reed stood up, walking to the small window that looked out over what remained of the command center's above-ground structures. Tell me, Admiral, did your council actually expect me to accept this offer? Or is this some kind of test? The alien's momentary silence was all the confirmation she needed. Thought so, she said, turning back to face him. Well, you can tell your Supreme Council that I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. I don't work for the people who try to exterminate my species. She paused, then added with deliberate casualness. Besides, I'm pretty busy these days teaching other humans how to kill Crackster warriors. We're getting really good at it. Zixnor's tentacles coiled tightly around his command staff. The Council will view your refusal as confirmation of human unpredictability and potential threat status. They may choose to bypass Earth entirely, leaving you to your own devices in a galaxy full of species far less accommodating than the hegemony. Reed smiled, and for the first time in their conversation, Admiral Zixnor felt a sensation that his species rarely experienced. Genuine alarm. Perfect, she said. That's exactly what we want. You tell your council that humans aren't interested in being anyone's protected species. We don't want your technology handouts or your condescending non-interference policies. What we want is to be left alone to develop on our own terms. She took a step closer to the alien, who instinctively moved back. And you can also tell them this. If anyone else comes to our planet looking for trouble, they'll find it, in abundance. Admiral Zixnor studied the human female carefully. There was no detectable deception in her demeanor, no fear, no uncertainty. Only a calm confidence that was more unnerving than any threat could have been. I will convey your response to the Council, he finally said, though I suspect they may find it problematic. Reed shrugged. That's not my problem. Now, unless you've got something else to discuss, I'd like to finish my coffee before it gets cold. With as much dignity as he could muster, Admiral Zixnor activated his personal teleportation device. As the quantum field began to envelop him, he heard the human's parting words. Oh, and Admiral, next time? Knock. Absolutely not. The Patriarch of the Void's voice resonated through the council chamber with unusual force. The human's response confirms our worst suspicions. They are unpredictable, aggressive, and entirely too self-assured given their primitive status. Admiral Zixnor stood silently as the council members debated the implications of Lieutenant Reed's rejection. He had delivered her message word for word, including the thinly veiled warnings. I find their attitude refreshing, the Genesis architect countered, earning shocked looks from several council members. When was the last time a pre-interstellar species showed such backbone? Most grovel for technology transfers or protection. That is because most pre-interstellar species possess appropriate humility regarding their place in the galactic order, the Mechanist Overseer retorted. These humans appear to suffer from collective delusions of grandeur. Are they delusions, though? The Void Shadow mused. They did, after all, defeat our Crackstar contractors rather decisively. The Matriarch of the Seven Suns pulsed with irritation. One victory against an unprepared force does not constitute galactic military significance. Had we deployed our full might... But that's just it, interrupted the Genesis architect. We didn't. And now we're seriously considering bypassing their planet entirely rather than risk another engagement. Doesn't that suggest these humans possess something worth our attention? Once again, all eyes turned to the witness, who had remained characteristically silent throughout the debate. In my long observation of emerging species, the ancient being finally said, I have noted a pattern. Those who achieve greatness often share a particular trait. They refuse to accept limitations imposed by others. Humans appear to exemplify this quality. The witness's gaze swept across the council. I recommend neither conquest nor bypassing. The council members stirred uneasily. It was rare for the witness to make direct recommendations. What do you suggest, then? Asked the Patriarch of the Void. Observation, non-interference, and patience. The witness's voice carried the weight of millennia of experience. Let them develop naturally. If they survive their own developmental challenges, they may yet surprise us all. And if they become a threat? Demanded the Mechanist Overseer. The witness's expression shifted into what might have been amusement. Then we will have confirmed our current assessment of their potential, won't we? After further debate, the Council narrowly approved the witness's recommendation. Earth would be designated a sovereign development zone, neither conquered nor protected, but simply left to its own evolutionary path with discreet monitoring from a distance. As the council adjourned, Admiral Zixnor found himself approached by the Genesis architect. You didn't include every detail of your encounter with the human in your official report, she observed quietly. Zixnor's eye stalks quivered in alarm. I assure you, council member, I reported the substance of... Relax, Admiral. The Genesis architect interrupted. I'm not accusing you of dereliction. I merely observed that your emotional response to the human was understated in your report. She frightened you, didn't she? Admiral Zixnor considered denying it, but found he couldn't. Not in the conventional sense of physical threat. he admitted. But there was something about her certainty, as though she could see possibilities that I could not. It was unsettling. The Genesis architect's facial appendages arranged themselves into her species' equivalent of a thoughtful expression. Perhaps that is their true advantage. Not technology, not physical prowess, but perspective. She turned to leave, then added, I suspect we haven't heard the last of Lieutenant Alexis Reed, or humanity in general. Admiral Zixnor watched her go, a strange feeling settling in his thorax. It wasn't quite dread, not exactly anticipation. Perhaps it was simply the uncomfortable recognition that the galaxy had just become significantly more interesting. And in his long experience, interesting was rarely synonymous with peaceful. 5 years after what Earth now officially called the Crackstar incident, and what soldiers unofficially called the Bug Zapper, humanity had undergone a transformation that would have been unthinkable before the brief alien invasion. Salvaged alien technology had accelerated Earth's scientific development by decades, if not centuries. The first human faster-than-light prototype was undergoing final testing in orbit. United Earth Defense Forces had replaced the fragmented military structures of individual nations. And Lieutenant Reed, now General Reed, despite her continued protests about unnecessary titles, had established the Asymmetric Warfare Academy, training the next generation of defenders in the unconventional tactics that had proven so effective against technologically superior foes. Reed was reviewing simulation results in her office when a familiar shimmering distortion appeared. You still haven't learned to knock, she observed without looking up as Admiral Zixnor materialized. My apologies, the alien said, his translator device now producing much more natural-sounding speech. I come with some urgency. Reed finally glanced up, noting the Admiral's agitated tentacle movements. What's got your appendages in a twist this time? The Devourer swarm has breached the hegemony's outer defensive perimeter, Zixnor said without preamble. 3 core worlds have already fallen. The Crackstar battalions have proven ineffective against their biological adaptability. Reed leaned back in her chair. And this concerns Earth. How exactly? I seem to recall we were designated a sovereign development zone. Your problems are your problems. The swarm consumes all organic matter in its path, Zixnor explained, his eye stalks quivering with what Reed had learned to recognize as genuine distress. It doesn't recognize political designations or respect boundaries. If the hegemony falls, Earth will inevitably find itself in the swarm's expansion path. So now you want our help, Reed said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. After deciding we weren't worthy of actual membership in your fancy space club. The Supreme Council has authorized me to offer Earth immediate full membership in the galactic hegemony, with all attendant rights and privileges, Zixnor stated formally, in exchange for your tactical expertise against the swarm. Reed studied the alien for a long moment. 5 years ago, she might have enjoyed watching him squirm a bit longer, but she'd grown in those years, just as humanity had. I'll need to consult with Earth's Unified Council, she finally said. But speaking personally, I think we might be interested, on one condition. Name it, Zixnor replied without hesitation, a measure of the hegemony's desperation. Reed smiled. I want the Crackstar assigned to my command. I have some ideas about how to improve their effectiveness. The Admiral's eye stalks froze in shock. The Crackstar? But they specifically invoked the Primal Deterrence Clause to avoid any contact with humans. Exactly, Reed said, her smile widening. And that's precisely why they need to work with us. They've been relying on technological superiority for so long they've forgotten how to adapt. The swarm is beating them because it evolves faster than their tactics do. She stood up, walking to a wall-sized display showing Earth's first prototype starship under construction. Humans don't have the luxury of superior technology. We've always had to outthink our opponents, adapt faster, fight smarter. That's what the hegemony needs right now. Not more advanced weapons, but a completely different way of thinking about combat. Zixnor was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes studying the human with what might have been newfound respect. The Crackstar will resist, he finally said. Reed's expression hardened into something that made even the battle-hardened Admiral internally recoil. They can resist all they want, but when they're faced with the choice between working with humans or being consumed by the swarm, I think they'll discover a sudden appreciation for our tactical insights. I will convey your condition to the Supreme Council, Zixnor said, though I suspect they may find it problematic. Reed finished for him, echoing his words from 5 years earlier. That's not my problem. The swarm is. As the Admiral prepared to depart, Reed added, Oh, And Zixnor, when you come back with the Council's answer, try knocking. We humans appreciate good manners. For the first time in their long acquaintance, Admiral Zixnor's facial tentacles arranged themselves in what a human might have recognized as a smile. I shall endeavor to remember that, General Reed, until our next meeting. As the alien disappeared in a shimmer of advanced technology, Reed turned back to the starship display. Humanity's first steps into the greater galaxy wouldn't be as conquerors or as conquered, but as equals. Hard-earned respect from a civilization that had initially dismissed them as primitive. All because they'd figured out how to make bug-like aliens really regret picking a fight with one particular human. Humanity wasn't the strongest species in the galaxy. They weren't the most technologically advanced, or the most numerous, or the most biologically resilient, but they were perhaps the most dangerous to underestimate. And in a galaxy full of threats like the Devourer swarm, that particular quality might just make them the allies everyone needed, even if no one was quite ready to admit it yet. As General Alexis Reed began drafting her recommendation to Earth's Unified Council, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. The galaxy's most feared warriors had refused to fight one human, and in doing so, they might have inadvertently saved both humanity and themselves from extinction. Sometimes the most significant victories came not from fighting battles, but from making your potential enemies think twice about starting them. The end.